Last time, on Daughter of the Twilight, Daughter of the Light, our 4 travelers were formally greeted by Princess Zelda herself. Since there was a shortage of rooms, Ilya and Link were allowed to share a room since they were close friends. In her frustration at Zelda's acceptance to the idea, Aura let slip her secret, that she was not from this time period.
What do you mean, not from this time?
I mean that I'm from the future.
How?
It's a long story.
I don't care. I like long stories. I want to hear the whole thing right now.
Alright, fine. I'll tell you.
Aura looked to Zelda for approval. The young princess nodded in her direction. Aura began her tale.
It was almost 10 years from this very day, and both worlds were on the brink of falling into darkness. I knew not how the darkness seeped into my home, for I was too little to remember. My Hylian father had drawn the Master Sword for the second time, and was trying as hard as he could to seal the darkness away. He fought so valiantly, so powerfully, but it was all in vain.
Hit! Yeah!
A huge black bubbling cloud pushed its way towards him. He rolled to the side and brought his sword down upon the black mass. The darkness split itself into 2 clouds, but it was too late. A large portion of it had been absorbed into the Master Sword. The clouds began to spark at the place they had split themselves apart.
Yeah!
The Hylian man swung his sword in a horizontal motion, slashing hard and fast around his body in a spinning motion. He screamed out a ferocious battle cry as he sliced through the ominous black clouds of darkness.
Hi!
A small patch that had been cleared of the darkness surrounded his body. It was then that I, his own daughter, threw myself into the fray. The Hylian swung his mighty blade, absorbing any darkness that got in his way.
Yeah!
I clawed at the shadows, pulling it towards me and then calling upon the power of the silver tear that hung at my neck, shattering the black masses into minuscule shards, which soon evaporated into nothingness. It seemed as though the battle was going so well, but the darkness was eating away at the blade of evil's bane, and its power was quickly waning. And with only a single silver tear of twilight, there wasn't much that I could do to aid my father in his battle against the shadows filled with malice, seeped in the reek of murder and pain. My father was growing weak. It had been hours, and he had been battered by the darkness. His strength, along with the power of the sword, was dissipating faster than our enemy. He let out a cry of pain as he was struck through the chest, the darkness finally landing a fatal blow on the man. I turned around to see my father kneeling on the ground. His arms hung limp by his sides. His sword tossed across from him, blood pouring from his wounds. His eyes were quickly losing the life that they once held. I cried out in terror and rushed to the man's side as I saw my father dying before my very eyes.
Aura.
Father!
Aura. Please. It's up to you. Now.
What's up to me?
I know that you are afraid, but...
Father, no!
Take the sword to the pedestal and seal the darkness once and for all.
The darkness would not wait for this painful, tender moment to finish between my father and I. It threw itself at us, consuming him in all of its shadows, but I rolled out of the way just in time. I picked up the sword and held it close to my chest. I could feel the evil that was trapped within its holy light pulsing through the metal. I looked back at where the darkness had lunged itself at my father. All that was left was a dark patch of blood, his earrings, and his shield. Everything else was gone. I resisted the urge to throw up at the very sight.
Back in the Twilight Realm, unbeknownst to the half-breed, her mother was busy dealing with the darkness that had seeped into the twilight. She had donned the Fused Shadow, the device that she had locked away 11 years ago to rot in seclusion because of the power she thought she would never have the need to call upon again. But she was wrong. She had needed to use the fearsome powers of the ancient magic that should have been forsaken. She shot her spider-like appendages in every which direction, smashing, tearing, and destroying everything in her path. Her loyal subjects, the other Twilight people, fought bravely beside her, casting their pure Twilight magic against the darkness. For hours the battle raged on, and finally, at the very moment they destroyed the portal from which the darkness had come, the Twilight Mirror itself, everything turned white. Everywhere. Even in the realm of light.
I was still clutching the Master Sword to my chest when everything around me disappeared. I was standing all alone in a vast, empty, seemingly endless expanse of white. And then there were 5 people standing around me, as if from nowhere. They too were all white. Their clothes, their skin, everything about them was more blanched than an albino. They were none other than the remaining sages from Ganondorf's onslaught. They told me what I had to do and why. My duty was to go back in time and change the past. Why? Because something had occurred that would undo my very existence.
In the past she had to return to, the Twilight Mirror had already been destroyed. This, of course, meant that the battle that was to happen 10 years from then would never take place. However, this also meant that the Twilight Princess and the Hero of Light would be separated forever, with no means of seeing each other again. The Twilight Princess knew better than to restore the mirror that was saturated with evil, just to be with a man, the Hylian man, who she loved. Her duty was first and foremost to her people, not her heart. Aura would have never been born, and worse still, in the past she had to change, Link was falling in love with a human, his childhood friend who was already deeply in love with him. Because he knew that he would never see the Twilight Princess again, he pushed back his feelings for her and opened his heart to another woman.
What I had to do now was to go back, bring my future parents together once more, and separate my future father from his childhood friend. I also had to make sure that I accomplished all of this within a time limit, and without restoring the Twilight Mirror.
Minda looked down at the tear-shaped pendant that was hanging around Aura's neck, that she had noticed when she first came to her.
So, that's the silver tip? Then why did you want mine?
Midna, you are my mother.
Wait. How could that... your mother? That's...
Aura is yours and Link's future child. Alternate future's child, if our goals are not met.
What? So she's... But how did you get to the past?
For some reason, because I was not the person that pulled the sword from the pedestal in the first place, when I put it back, it had a strange effect on me. I was flung 10 years into the past. The sages told me that it was their plan all along, and that they needed to change the future that I came from, because in that future, on that day, the world ended. But the only one who was capable of changing the future was me, and I would have to avert the prevention of my own birth. I am the only one who can do this, the daughter of the Twilight, and the daughter of the Light.